Once again, we are live. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Manny Wolfe Show. Every now and then, I get a guest who, frankly, I just want to connect with because they seem cool. And that's what tomorrow's guest is like. No, I'm just kidding. That is what this guy is like. Cody Jefferson. What's happening, brother?
Man, how are you?
I'm good, man. If I don't let myself get too sort of tricked by, what social media looks like.
Sure.
I'm good. And that's what's so funny to me. I think that's what I want to start talking with you about, because when I read some of the stuff you write, you have an ability to write well, which is nice, but you also are able to capture some ideas that I think are typically pretty meaningful, which suggests to me that you're a deep thinker. I also know a little bit about your background because of what you share.
Yeah.
And I think I want to just start with we'll just throw you a slider, a knuckleball here, okay. And just be like, why are we so quick to sort of confuse social media with real life?
That's a great question.
It went right in the dirt there, didn't it?
Yeah, you did. You did. I think that everyone is searching for meaning, and everyone is searching for purpose. Everyone is searching for a deeper something, right? Whatever spirituality you follow, I mean, there's this sense of longing for more, and for a deeper kind of intrinsic sense of what does this life mean?
Yeah.
And I think before social media, we didn't get a lot of lanes confused, and we didn't have direct access to so much bombardment and overwhelm of information, whether true, false, good, bad, indifferent.
Yeah, just information.
You know? And you couple that with, it's interesting. It used to be that you would go to a job, or you'd start a business, or you'd do your thing, your 9 to 5, but it didn't necessarily define who you were. It didn't necessarily have to define much about you. It defined as much as the church that you went to, or how many kids you have, or anything else. And it's interesting now, the whole idea of social media has, that is identity. And even when there cannot be any gray. It has to be black and white. You're either successful or you're not. You're either pro this or you're against it. And it's not even that you can't not be it. You have to be against something, or you have to be for something. We've created all these really interesting lines in the sand because, again, if we want to get really deep with it, this is something that I would just have to kind of expand on, because it's something that's just kind of, when we all want to belong.
Absolutely.
And this gives us a framework to hold on to some sort of identity, and to feel that we're grabbing towards some sort of collective that says, okay, I'm with you, I rally with you, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the problem with social media is we don't know how to do that in real life.
Right.
And we've lost all those meaningful relationships, and we've lost what it is to, case in point, I have no problem sitting down and talking with one of my just the black friend about, hey, what's going on? What do you feel about this? How are you?
Right.
What is this? What is all this?
Yeah.
Because I'm not black.
Right.
So help me understand this.
Yeah.
Now, that would be, you would think, a very, very logical way to approach any type of conversation. But in social media land, it's no, we have to be loud. You have to be vocal. You have to post these pictures. You have to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we create a false binary. And I think that's where we're at in social media land, is we've created this false binary that's either this or it's this. It can't be other. And we do that with the most mundane things. Manny, I'm not kidding you. as I was getting onto this link, I saw 6 times, I counted because it was annoying to me, 6 times, let's end this debate for all.
Yeah.
Pineapple on pizza or not.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like we create this binary that everybody's used to interacting with, and we've created these engaging, bait tactics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what happens when we throw them in the landscape of social justice, of activism?
Yeah.
Right. Even of this whole idea of a pandemic and everything, like we have, you're either this or you're this.
Right.
Right. Politically, you're either this or you hate everyone, regardless of who it is.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we've created this false binary that like you're either or, and it creates this really weird dystopia.
I really like the false binary image. I think that image works really well for me as a place to start and a place to start to latch on to what's going on.
Yeah.
I think that social media is agnostic in the sense that it's neither good nor bad.
Sure.
But I think that what it does, whether Zuckerberg and Dorsey and those guys, whether they knew this or not, which I seriously doubt, going into the creation of these platforms, what these platforms do, among other things, because let's face it, we have a wave of prosperity created entirely from social media.
Sure.
You and me both, right?
Yeah.
I mean, our careers are good. I assume yours is good.
It is.
And it's rewarding and it's deep and it's and there's something really meaningful about knowing that I've helped people on most continents.
Sure.
So those things are good.
Yeah.
I think anybody would argue they're good. And at the same time, though, the platforms themselves create a perfect storm of opportunity for what we now call trolling and keyboard warrioring, but really it's the ability to divest yourself of the consequences of your actions. Sure. Which brings about a sort of it's sort of like a perverse kissing cousin to voyeurism. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you can be a jerk and get that low grade charge if you want.
Yeah, well, because dopamine is dopamine.
Because dopamine is dopamine, right? Yeah, it too is isn't necessarily, you don't have to go over after altruistic endeavors to get dopamine hits.
Well, and then we also confuse, social media wasn't really, it was a thing, but it wasn't a thing when it wasn't a thing when I was in high school.
Right.
And then even into my 20s when I started in ministry, it wasn't, no, there's no Facebook, none of that. Right. If there was, we certainly didn't have it.
Yeah.
And we focused on doing, like we were doing things. We were always doing something. And by that, I mean, we were always, I was always busing kids downtown to, we would feed 300-400 of Tulsa's homeless. We would do things all the time. Right. And we called that action, right? Like you had to actually do something. And I think now we're confusing typing with or action. Liking or commenting or sharing or spewing just hatred and venom as action, and it's not.
It's
the entrepreneur that buys a new course every single month, right? That focuses on doing all these things but never actually doing anything. It's the person who's 100 pounds overweight but can tell you all about fitness and why keto is the best diet ever. Well, yeah, but you're not doing anything.
It's like being trapped in the holodeck, man.
It's
like confusing the holodeck for the world outside of it. It's funny. I wind up talking with clients and students about this idea all the time. And it's so funny once you can see it, once you get past the threshold and you can differentiate between action and the impression of action in our minds, then it'll probably never sort of waylay you again. But it's really weird. I love the stuff you're bringing up, Cody. It's really weird because until you cross that threshold, it's very difficult to distinguish between action, boots on the ground in the real world, rubber meeting the road, right? Making your way down that quarter mile, whatever, and thinking about doing it.
Right. Because
the mind can't tell without input. It can't distinguish between thinking about action and action, which the converse is that's what makes visualization so powerful.
Sure.
Right.
So, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really a trip. It's like, who would have ever guessed there was sort of a quote unquote shadow side to visualization exercises, right?
Yeah.
Where you could get lost in it and not. Michael Jordan would never dream of not getting on the court after visualizing a perfect game.
Absolutely. But you find this across the board. I mean, you find it in relationships.
Yeah, you do.
Right? Like well, I was thinking about you all day. Yeah, but you didn't tell me. I know, but I meant to plan that date night for weeks. It's just things kept coming up. I meant to, like, in my head, I was thinking of you this whole time. Yeah, but you didn't do anything.
Doesn't that count for something?
Doesn't that count for something?
Really?
Right? Your grandmother's in the hospital. You say, I meant to call you every single week. I just got busy. I just meant to call you. Well, your intentions don't mean anything.
Right. Yeah, man. Right?
And again, we have it's interesting. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and this idea of, okay, well, we think it's one thing. Well, how many times do I need to post? What do I need to put? Like, that's not the actual, like, we're talking, that can be marketing.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. Right.
Yeah.
But what actually needs to happen, you just need to start talking to more people.
Right. It can't stop shy of
actually just go do something.
Yeah.
But the problem is, well, but what if they say no? What if I'm met with some sort of rejection on the internet? If somebody rejects me, I just block them.
Yeah. Just move right along.
Right. There's no repercussion, and there's no hard work.
Yeah.
Having requires work. And I think we're seeing, I genuinely think we're seeing play out in real time, people rallying around an idea of what they think social justice looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But this is also a generation that has been raised with such entitlement and such Amazon Prime here in 2 day ideas, parents consistently bailing out of everything.
Yeah.
That this is what it looks like when a generation has a really large tantrum.
Yeah.
Like, I want what I want, and I want it now, but you don't even know what you want.
Yeah.
You don't even know what you want. You're just angry, but you're pointing that aggression at the wrong things for the dopamine that feels the same, regardless of any action that actually moves forward.
Yeah. So let me ask you, I got 2 questions for you that I'm really curious your feedback on. One is, in the bigger picture, in the longer timeline, do you see everything that's happening, including just the advent of social media? Because even though it's been around for 15 years now.
That's young.
It's young, right? And we're babies within it.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's exposed a whole new potential for us to abdicate responsibility, to not be men, to not be women, to just sort of be like children.
Well, and this was what we're seeing, because these are people that are typically younger than myself or younger than you, that are creating a lot of this noise and chaos. And like, we're seeing play out in real time the first generation that was raised on social media.
Right.
We're seeing how they act in a real world scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. So then my question is, do you think that these are growing pains, and that, I think the pendulum swings, and in the trajectory of progress, the pendulum swings back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Right. Sure. And when it gets to the top of each swing, it's pretty disconcerting. It's pretty unrestful.
It's a violent. Yeah.
Yeah. It can be violent. Do you think that it's still trending in a positive direction ultimately? And that these are sort of like I think that these are growing pains and death rattles at the same time.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
again, I don't think it's I don't think it's a binary. Right? I think it's both. I think that it is. I think that it is going to swing us in a new direction, and regardless of what we choose to believe about the good or bad of that direction, we're going. And do I think that we'll level out in one way, shape, or form? Sure.
Yeah.
Are we moving towards a positive? I think that's all perception. I think we're always shifting towards a positive in some direction, right? Some good will come out of this. Right? When your house burns down, it is devastating. But now you get to rebuild. Now you get to look up and see the sky that was once enclosed. So there's a lot of beauty. Biblically it says, that we tear down, overthrow, destroy. That which is no longer useful. And so, do I think that we're going like we're really swinging that pendulum? I do. Do I think we're making really rash, irresponsible decisions? I do. Do I think we are? Manny, I for most of my life have struggled with just being a man and me being angry. A lot of us just struggle with that aggression.
Yeah, man.
And I grew up and I experienced some things, saw some things. We have a lot of, in the house that I grew up in, we have a lot of pictures on the walls. And the pictures aren't there just because they're hanging on the wall. They're covering up a hole in the wall, right? Yeah. Because you get mad, you punch a hole in the wall.
Like all of my apartments.
Yeah. And so for me, I when I would get mad, I would just punch the wall, punch a door, punch holes in things, break things.
Yeah.
And the worst part about it? It's your stuff you're destroying.
Right. Yeah.
In your aggression, you don't know how to channel it effectively. And so everything is fair game for destruction. I think that's where we're at right now. And I think that we're going to have to really dial into how we actually make sense of the pain and aggression and what we do with it that's constructive moving forward.
Yeah.
What was constructive for me? I'm in really great shape because it went there, right? Like, go to the gym. I write. I practice meditation, right? I do all of these things that help to create a new narrative and a new story and a new normal.
Right.
Right. These acts don't create new normals for us.
So can you identify? So many people will be able to relate to the first part of your journey as you just gave us a snapshot, and that's fine. I would guess that, like myself, you don't need to relitigate your earlier years all that much.
No.
I get that you're not even the same guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, people always want to know about my background and my story. And I'm like, yeah, I'll tell you, but you could just read the book. It's like, I wanted to trap it all somewhere else so I could move on. And so I put it in 320 pages just for you. So, but my curiosity for you, I guess I want to know two things. One is, can you identify that moment when you really were like, I want to be better than this? And then the other question for you is, in your own personal experience, how does your faith and your relationship to Jesus Christ? I'm not Christian, by the way. I'm really curious how your relationship, which is very personal to you, obviously, with Jesus Christ, how it informs you now, because I can tell clearly that it's not in what you'd call a prototypical dynamic. You've got more influences there. You've got more things happening. So the turning point for you, and then how your past experience in the church informs you now.
Yeah. And that's it. So I was in ministry for 13 years, in occupational ministry as a pastor in some way, shape, or form, and until I couldn't be anymore. Yeah. And the tipping point for me, I walked through a divorce
Mm-hmm.
It's very public because I was a pastor. I stayed in ministry for around a year after. And in that year, I lost 8 family members and friends, all unrelated deaths, murders, suicides, overdoses. I mean, all of them, nothing was not tragic. They were all tragic.
Yeah.
They were all somewhere on CNN. Some made international news as some of the worst crimes, like to minors in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. And in the meantime, I'm still showing up being, all things to all people, and, preaching that this really, what Bonhoeffer would call this really cheap grace.
Yeah.
Right. Because throughout my life,
well said.
I'd gone through some stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I had never experienced pain at that magnitude, to the point where I couldn't even process it. It was hit after hit after hit.
Yeah.
And some of your listeners are like, you'll know exactly, like, it feels like I can't even, it's like when you're drowning. And I actually wrote a song about this. It's like you can't even get up for air. And the second that you think, like, you just get pulled back under. And one night I woke up and I was sick, but it was a different kind of sick. It was a sick I hadn't felt before. I had my son, and we had this rule that, this thing where, hey, if at any point in time you get really, really sick or anything happens, just call, like, we'll just swap days or something. So things start going numb, and I start shaking and convulsing and going in and out of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I make, long story short, get to the hospital, because I have to go to the hospital at this point, and I go unconscious. So basically my body I went through sepsis. I went septic. I went through adrenal shutdown. I went through thyroid scramble, and I went through, thyroid scramble, hormonal shutdown, and just from the severe stress of everything. And so they thought I was going to die. This is in 2016. And it's, and they're like, listen, you've got to slow down. I came to like 3 days later. And it was at that point that I recognized, like, I mustered myself up, and I grabbed my IV bag, and I'm walking to the bathroom, literally 25 pounds lighter in 3 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's insane.
That's crazy.
And I just looked at the mirror. I'm like, you're drowning, and nobody's coming to save you. God's not coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save you.
Mm-hmm.
So what needs to die in you to become the man you said you'd be?
Yeah.
Right. And at that point, things shifted. And it was a few months later that I stepped out of the church. It was because I just couldn't keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't keep showing up all day, reciting things that I didn't know that I believed anymore. I went on a journey of reading books of all faiths, not to prove my faith in apologetics, which I had done for 13 years, not studying it academically like I had done for 8 years, but just to figure out, am I full of shit?
Yeah.
Is all of this just a big, like, are we all just on the same journey? We all have these things that we want to believe so that we feel less insignificant and like we have a purpose, and so that we have some sort of moral direction. Because if we don't have a faith or some sort of spiritual center to come back to, like, what's the point of anything? We're just animals. What's the point? So I need some sort of validity to my existence. Like, that's kind of where I set out.
Yeah.
And I came back to the Jesus story, not because, which this is going to sound heretical to most people, not because I think it's right, not because I think it's like the only way,
right?
Which in and of itself is heresy. I understand that, but to me, it makes the most sense.
Okay.
And to me, it does function as an anchor.
Yeah.
To me, right. And so, do I believe in Jesus Christ and his teachings? Yes. Do I believe in the literal translation of the Bible? Never have.
Yeah.
When I was in ministry.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about the idea and the fact that there is something bigger than me. And everything that this man in this book teaches seems like a really great framework. I love the idea that Neville Goddard speaks of that is when you read the text of Scripture, don't read it as an account of history or of the historicity of mankind. Think about it as your own transcendence into awakening, that God the Father is your consciousness. It is your conscious awakened being. That Jesus is man. It is what makes all of this possible. And so Jesus being the first man who really understood, wow, there's something bigger up here than I recognize. There's this fully God piece, but then I'm also in this skin. And so there's this fully man piece. So I'm both, right? So that's kind of where I land, is somewhere in that mystical middle.
Yeah.
And probably every couple of months I come down with atheist flu.
Well, I think that's a beautiful sort of way. There's a couple of things here too. One is, I want to say, what I took from my upbringing was to not trust religion at all.
Sure.
And I had a very strange upbringing. I was born in a cult, and in that cult, people would quote Jesus, they'd quote Buddha, they'd quote Mao, they'd quote Stalin. It was all done in this, and they quote everybody else too. Confucius, I really like Confucius actually now. But they'd all do it in this way of spiritual one-upsmanship to each other. One of the things about a cult is that you have to abdicate some of your sort of higher levels of autonomy, your maturity, in order to be in that kind of dynamic with a charismatic leader figure. And so in order to come in on some level, you have to revert back to a teenager. Pretty trippy stuff.
Wow.
And so they were, all the men especially, were always trying to one up each other. It was a dick measuring contest, but it was in your knowledge of spirituality.
Yeah.
And so, and Jesus is one of the top guys in that game.
Yeah.
And so I came away from all that with a severe distrust.
Sure. Yeah.
Especially since becoming a coach and coming into the online space, some of the most wonderful people I have met come from a Christian background. I say this only to say, maybe to tell a cautionary tale about not questioning our own biases.
Right.
I really like how your story went, severe period, not moment of crisis, but period of crisis.
Yeah.
And then you were able to come back with a broader conception of, you created a spirituality that works for you.
Yeah. Well, Richard Rohr, who is this friar, he's an incredible author and just a brilliant man. That his teachings and his books were really foundational for me when I was walking through kind of a season of losing, because I lost everything, right?
Yeah.
It was 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I was close to $400,000 in debt. Like it was, I had nothing. When I stepped out of the church, there was, I thought it was going to be a much longer transition, and it was a day. And you're left kind of, again, this whole idea of rebuild and the pendulum. But Richard Rohr contends that true spiritual contentment is that when there is nothing to prove, nothing to hide, and nothing to protect. And the problem with spirituality, I don't say the problem with faith, but it can be. The problem with religion, right? So let's reframe that. The problem is that, like any belief, it becomes a belief because it's a thought and a feeling that we hold on to.
Yeah.
Right? And this is like coaching 101. We have to get down to the thoughts and the feelings so that we can change the belief, and the belief is changed by the behavior. And so all that to say, it doesn't matter what you believe. This is why people stay in really unhealthy relationships. This is why people stay in destitute. This is why people never start and finish something. This is why people never love, right? Because they're told something over and over and over, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not. You just believe it.
Yeah.
Because it's ingrained, right? You know this probably better than anyone. You were raised in a cult.
Yeah.
Like, there's an indoctrination that happens. There's an indoctrination that happens within the Christian church, right?
Absolutely.
I know we call it Sunday school and VBS and everything else, right? We still want to call it that, but it is anything that pushes an ideology into someone's subconscious. That is indoctrination.
Yeah.
And so the problem with religious indoctrination, with religious beliefs, right? And the problem that we're finding right now with people who believe certain things, it doesn't matter if it's true or not.
Right.
And the media is pushing an agenda, and people are pushing an agenda to confirm the bias of which you believe to be true, so that you believe you're right. The problem with those beliefs is that when you hold that belief so tight, what happens when you get backed in a corner? It becomes a fist. And we use those beliefs as weapons. So for me, I've just contended, okay, this is what I believe, and I'm just going to hold it with an open hand. And that's what I try to lead all of my clients. So I don't care what you believe,
right? But
let's let it. Would you be open to the possibility of?
Right.
And from there, now what's able to happen is now I'm able to shake your hand because I don't have anything to prove, to hide, or to protect.
That's there's a lot of really beautiful imagery in this conversation, and I want to just kind of shine a light on that. I want to make a point of pointing that out to you. Unfortunately, no, I'm going to spin this a different way. I want to invite you back since we didn't get enough time.
Sure.
Does that sound good?
That would be great.
I'd love to have you back. I'd love to go to hang out some more and go further into this conversation. I was afraid this was going to happen, and it did.
That's my apologies. That's my fault.
No, you gotta look, man. Happy wife, happy life. Let's be clear about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
you do what you do.
Yeah. And this was a really just a beautiful conversation. Thank you. So often I enter into shows or podcasts. I've done a few, quite a few. And they always end up kind of a regurgitation of tell us your story. Tell us how you got here. Yeah. What are your tips on business? And this was really refreshing. So I'd love to do it again.
Well, thank you, Cody. Yeah. And you know, as far as the sort of promotional aspect goes, my belief is that if people hear who a person really is, that's going to be the strongest call to reach out to them. So I'm going to jump on the call that I have coming up. I'm just barreling towards it right now. And then I'm going to have my assistant reach back out to you. Thank you so much, man. I'm really looking forward to going further into this with you, my friend.
Too.
Okay, brother.